Hi, I'm Angela Cavanaugh, the Executive Director of CAI, and I would like to welcome all attendees and thank our partners, the Board of Directors, and the CAI team for today's program. Some housekeeping rules today. All participants will be muted. Please type your questions into the question box and be sure to name the panelists that you would like the question directed to. If you need a certificate of completion, please email Jackie at Jacqueline, JACLYN, at CAI-NJ.org. And just a note, you must be in attendance for the entire presentation to qualify for a certificate. I would now like to introduce Kathleen Radler from our membership committee. Welcome, Kathleen.
Hi, good. Thank you, Angela. Good afternoon. Sorry, I hear construction in the background. My name is Kathleen Radler. I'm a member of the membership committee for CAI. And I'm just here to remind everybody that's participating today, if you did not renew your membership, please do so. If you need help, you can contact Angela or myself with an email after this, and we can send you the link. You can do it online, you can call them, and you can also call CAI National how to do that. And if you're not a member of CAI, please contact myself, Angela, or Robin, and we will help you and guide you on CAI and tell you how it will benefit you, whether you're a homeowner, a manager, or a business leader. So for homeowners, you have access to CAI's ADR program, which is cost-effective way to fulfill your association's legal obligations. So if there's ever a lawsuit going on, instead of getting an attorney, which is more expensive, you can go to CAI and it's a lot less expensive. I believe it's, I won't go over the prices, CAI will go over the prices. Also, us community associations that I know of have the best boards. So at CAI, we educate them, they'll be knowledgeable, they'll be prepared to lead their community successfully and help the board succeed. And we at CAI can also do that when you're a member. You also have access to the industry leaders in areas as accounting, engineering, insurance, legal, and every other vendor you can think of, like from landscapers to plumbing to mitigation people. Also, not to mention, as homeowner leaders, if you're on the board, 3 to 15 board members can go under one low price, and you can do that throughout. So say you join 3 board members today, and then in 6 months you want to add more, it's still the same price. And also, December 17th, it's free for homeowner leaders, and it's free for managers to attend. And that is the roundtable discussion. For managers, companies, your benefits, you have access to online directory of all the industry leaders to help your communities navigate these unparalleled times, such as COVID-19. So, you know, you can contact engineering companies. I know a few if you want to reach out to me on air quality and, you know, how to, as the cold weather approaches, how to keep people not locked up in their homes. Business partners, you get the continued opportunity to build your brand. You're committed to help. We are committed to helping you with certain platforms such as online Zoom seminars, and we'll provide the necessary education to support your business. Also, we can tell you ways to advertise, like our Community Trends magazine. They have a special team that'll do that for you. And then I'm just going to end this with some of the upcoming events. On the 9th of December, we have our next webinar at 12 p.m., such as it is today. On December 11th, they have an HOA feud. Angela can go in more detail with that. And on the 16th, they have a holiday beer and cheer, and you must register ahead of that because they give you sample packages. So I believe they have to send it out to you in a, you know, mail it to you. And that's all. And again, my name is Kathleen Radler, and I can be reached. I'll give you my cell phone number, 908-868-6140. Angela, you want to write that in the chat? So if you need help on being a new member, or if you're an existing member and you need to learn how to utilize CAI more to your advantage, since we're no longer person to person, I can guide you through that. So thank you, everybody, and I hope you have a great rest of your webinar.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. We're going to move along. First up, we have Dan Barros. Dan is a partner and has been with Cutolo Barros since 2009. Mr. Barros concentrates his practice in the area of community association law and commercial litigation. He provides homeowner associations, condominium associations, and cooperatives with a full range of legal advice and services. Mr. Barros serves as general counsel to community association boards, providing legal guidance in governing documents, interpretation, drafting, and negotiations of association service contracts, drafting rules and regulations, conducting alternate dispute resolution, known as ADR, collections, transitions, negotiations, and developers' construction defects litigation, municipal services relations, fair housing compliance, restrictive covenant enforcement and interpretation, and any necessary litigation-related services. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you. Can you see the PowerPoint?
We can.
Oh, you can. All right, great. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for participating in this webinar. I'm Daniel Barros. I'm an attorney with Cutolo Barros, and what I'll be discussing today is the COVID-19 pandemic and how it's redefined roles and responsibilities within the association. Last year we were caught off guard. We had the pandemic come in March. We weren't prepared for it. Then we had the DCA impose new regulations on May 18th, 2020. So not only were we dealing with a global pandemic, but we were also dealing with new regulations. So we were all scrambling, trying to figure out the right way to conduct meetings and the right way to proceed. So, for board members, for property managers, I would say between March of last year and maybe till now, it's probably been the most stressful times of their careers, as more is expected of them. And so what this is about is really navigating association governance during a pandemic. It's my personal belief that I think boards have done an incredible job of adjusting, so have property managers. And really what we're balancing is the association's interests versus the interests or the owner's expectations. For the board, we have to protect the association. We have that fiduciary duty. And for the owners, they have an expectation that their common amenities are going to be open. So that's the first point of discord. Now, fortunately, there was an amendment to the Nonprofit Corporations Act, which has allowed all of us to participate in virtual meetings. And the amendment to Nonprofit Corporations Act does require that you have rules and guidelines and procedures for conducting these remote meetings. And we have to verify that the people participating are members. We have to provide each participant with an opportunity to participate in the meeting, and we must maintain a record of any votes and other actions taken during the meeting. Our notices for these virtual meetings must include a description of the means of remote communication, which is usually a simple Zoom link or a telephone number that you can call into. So you want to confer with your attorney or counsel to prepare a resolution that allows for these electronic remote meetings, so you can avoid any procedural challenges, by anyone later on claiming that, well, the meetings weren't proper because there was no resolution providing for guidelines and procedures. So that's one of the first things you want to do. I know a lot of us were doing Zoom meetings just out of pure necessity and didn't get to the resolution part, but more and more communities are moving forward with those resolutions. Now, conducting the proper meeting. With the DCA regulations, one of the things it introduced was more transparency. So any binding decision by the board has to be approved in an open meeting. This is a deviation from past practices where you would see the board have an executive session, make certain decisions, approve them in closed session, and the membership may or may not find out about them until 3 or 6 months down the road. Binding decisions would be anything that affects the association as a whole, such as resolutions, contracts, policies. So make sure that we're doing those in open session. Any binding decision that's made during a closed executive session will be deemed null and void. So you want to ensure that you're taking the votes in open meeting. The virtual meetings are actually a good opportunity to lead the membership, to have an open dialogue with the membership, to provide them with the details of the decisions that are made. It creates a better understanding by the unit owners of what the board decisions are. You want to educate the attendees as to the details on contracts. You want to identify the cost of the contract, different bids that you may have received, the reasons why you made certain decisions. Ensure all matters are voted on by the board in these open meetings. A designated board member should call for a motion before the voting. The motion should be seconded prior to the voting. And then the board members should cast their votes verbally for the record. It's important that we keep these types of records now that we're in a virtual setting, and that all votes are memorialized because they're binding decisions now. So you may want to also conduct an open session with the unit owners. A lot of them have been cooped up for months. A lot of them want to know when life can go back to normal and common amenities can be opened. And that's going to be a continual struggle as we see coronavirus numbers spike in the recent months, and hopefully at some point in time there'll be a significant decrease in those cases. So, members can submit questions in advance of meetings by email. If you're dealing with a non-hostile crowd, which is sometimes the case, you can permit live questions, or you could use the question and answer function on Zoom, which is a good way to continue the dialogue. Now, election meetings, this is, as we were used to, we would always hold a meeting at the clubhouse or hold a meeting at the municipal building, libraries, but with Executive Order 196, it's 10-person maximum for indoor gatherings. So now, these meetings are going to be done virtually. One of the issues that I've been seeing is difficulty in securing judges to tally the votes. So, before your election, and ensure that you do secure judges. It may be difficult. There's different levels of fear when it comes to COVID. Some people are uncomfortable. You may not be able to select a judge. If you don't have a clubhouse, then the judge has to go to the attorney's office or go to management's office. So, worst case scenario, and I know managers and other attorneys will kill me, but the judges can be managers or counsel. Typically, we stay away from getting involved in elections, but the circumstances dictate that we do have to participate in that. Public tallying of votes, another wrinkle in the election process. The DCA requires that the votes be tallied in public. Well, if you're doing in a virtual meeting, the hurdle you're going to have to overcome is opening the ballots, showing them on the screen, and if you have 200 votes, that meeting will take about 4 hours. The quickest way of doing it is having a separate screen a separate camera for a room that is for the judges to vote or to tabulate the votes. And so it still meets the public tallying requirement. And that's preferable and more time efficient. You also have the anonymity of votes, which is a new part of the DCA regulations. So you're going to have to set a deadline prior to the meeting that says this is when you have to return the ballots by, because there's going to be no in-person voting on these meetings. Planning for the future, we want to ensure that, our budgets for 2021, that we take the lessons from 2020 and apply them to our budgets. We don't want to have any shortfalls in budgets that will require us to have special assessments or emergency assessments down the road in 2021, because as you know, many people are experiencing financial hardships due to COVID-19. Now, the biggest issue is, when are we opening up the amenities? I can already hear within different associations, a call for the playgrounds to be open, the clubhouse to be open, and part of it, this has probably been the most stressful part of a board's duty. Usually they're used to voting on budgets and voting on vendors, and now you see them having to step up and adhere to this fiduciary duty, which is to protect and maintain the value of members' properties. One of the benefits of being a unit owner, you can suggest anything, you can propose anything, but you don't have a fiduciary duty to the association. Whereas the board can have significant downside to the extent they make decisions that aren't properly made. The fiduciary duty is a simple duty of undivided loyalty, and imposes a duty of ordinary care. It's the law's highest standard of care. So when defining the duty of ordinary care, it's really just that the board acted reasonably and with such care as an ordinarily prudent person would use in the same circumstances. Obviously we saw this summer with all the pool closings that people were ready to riot. One of my associations even held a rally to get the pool open, and of course threats to sue the board members individually. And that makes, when you're a volunteer on a board and someone threatens to sue you personally, it really affects your decision making, really decreases your enjoyment of being on the board and being in the community. Just keep in mind that there's the business judgment rule, which insulates you from liability. So long as your decisions do not have any fraud, self-dealing, or unconscionable conduct. You want to rely on your professionals. That's the easiest way to insulate yourself. Your insurance brokers, attorneys, management professionals. As long as you're relying on them, your decisions are safe. So you can make a wrong decision and yet it be protected. So understand that your insurance policies will include exclusions of coverage for communicable diseases and viruses. So keep this in mind when opening your amenities. Your directors and officers policy will offer you no coverage whatsoever because they don't cover injury claims. So, a lot of people want to use waivers. Waivers are ineffective. They're not applicable to minors, not applicable to claims for gross negligence, not applicable to third-party claims, and they're disfavored by the courts. So when if you're considering opening the amenities, you want to follow best practices, which is, the Department of Health standards, what's been set forth in CDC guidelines, executive orders. Keep in mind that when you do open your amenities, you're implying that the amenities are safe to use and that the association took adequate measures to protect and ensure the safety of the membership. Property managers are more involved now than ever with, vetting out vendors, trying to secure the costs of, pool openings, developing agendas for the board for their binding votes, and, overseeing a lot of the sanitary measures that have to be implemented in the association for amenities to open. Lastly, community, having a committee, a health and safety committee would be something very valuable. It allows owners to get involved, not to the extent that the board's involved, but to participate, use their special skills to be involved in the community. And they can review the risks involved in opening the amenities. They can offer methods to minimize those risks. So, use committees. Of course, the golden rule is you can delegate, but you can never abdicate responsibility. So, and also ensure that your committees are covered by your D&O policy. So that's a quick overview. To the extent anyone needs my PowerPoint presentation, I kind of skipped over a lot of stuff because I'm long-winded. You're more than welcome to a copy.
Yes, we will make that available, and also this entire webinar will be in our webinar library. I have a few questions for you from our attendees. The first one is, does the 10-person max executive order also apply to office workspace?
No, but there are certain precautions that offices have to take. I know here you have the temperature readings, we have sanitary stations throughout the office. Those same things would apply to other businesses as well. So there are certain guidelines that are set up by the governor that you must adhere to. It's not the old workplace. I mean, now you're taking temperatures. People have to everyone has the sanitation, or what's the word I'm looking for? The Purell on their desk, and everyone must social distance. When you're in the common areas, you have to wear a mask. Those are all implemented to allow businesses to exceed the 10-person gathering.
We have time for one more question, and then if we miss any questions, feel free to email me, and we'll definitely get you answers. I'll forward them to the speakers. Last question for you: what are the protocols that the board and management should implement when conducting annual election meetings and meetings open to the members?
What protocols or procedures?
Yep, it says protocols. Yep, protocols and procedures. I would imagine that makes sense.
Well, the DCA and the Radburn law basically identified exactly what needs to happen from a notice standpoint. There's a certain period, 14 days for a call for candidates period. In terms of ballots, you have to have as many write-in slots as you do open seats on the board. To the extent that you're going to, it's almost impossible now to have an in-person meeting. So you have to make sure that you provide them with the Zoom link. I haven't had any problems with elections. The hardest issue has been securing judges who want to volunteer. If you do find judges that will volunteer, you want to make sure that they wear masks, that sanitary wipes are available, and that they socially distance from one another. So you're basically adhering to the normal protocols for doing elections. And
thank you. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Ross Catanzarite and Rich Treves of Accent Group. Ross has been principal of the Exton Group for over 25 years, specializing in exterior and exterior restoration services. He will be discussing preparation of surfaces and applications of paint, and Rich will be discussing, as a paint specialist, and will be discussing paint and stain types. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for attending. We're going to start off by speaking about different paint products and coatings. Rich specializes in paint coatings, so I'm going to let him take over, and then I'll jump in to discuss applications and surfaces. Rich? Oh, might have a technical.
Okay, thanks, Ross. Can you guys hear me?
Now we can. Here you go.
Yes, you can. We can't hear you, Rich. Ross, you want to take this, and then we'll hopefully get Rich started?
Well,
I
I'll
can't.
start until Rich gets his.
Better? Yes?
Yes,
All
now
right,
we
now we can hear you. Go
I'm
ahead.
not sure.
you have one more chance.
Go ahead.
One more chance, last chance. Sorry. So, real quick, just talking about paint and coatings a little bit in the industry. So it's funny how people talk about paint and they say just paint it. So a little bit about paint, just from a technical standpoint. It's actually made of pigment, resin, solvent, and additives. The resin itself is the binder that holds the pigment together. But in the industry, we kind of talk about the word paint kind of very loosely. You know, you'll hear just paint it. But for every substrate, every surface, there is a coating that is best suited. So that's something that obviously we can help you guys work with specifications and working with an engineer and architect on coatings. But mainly, why do we paint? The reason that you want to paint something is to protect it. You guys all have properties that are very valuable, and if you do not maintain them, you know, the integrity of the substrate, the wood, the metal, the concrete will all break down over time, obviously causing you expensive repairs in the long term. So like I said, everything pretty much can be painted, but for most of your sites, it's a lot of wood, whether it's cedar or pine. Painting keeps the wood from rotting, which is obviously very important to the long term, you know, the cost of your house and cost of maintaining your properties. Like I said, there's a different paint for each application. You're mostly using cedar and pine, so a lot of these jobs will get what's called a solid stain. The solid stain protects the wood, but allows the natural grain of the wood to come through. So it's the difference kind of between stain and paint. You know, stain will absorb a little more, less likely to peel, and it's going to give you the protection that you're looking for while also maintaining, again, the natural grain of the wood. When you're talking about a condo project or an association, you might use paint, a satin or a semi-gloss on the doors and maybe the trim, the garage doors. Mostly, again, it's a solid stain for the body of the building. As far as decks, a lot of decks are cedar. Some are pressure treated. With a deck, you have the options of a clear, a solid, or a semi-transparent. There also is an oil-based solid. For now, you know, I can talk about that in a second. There are something called VOC laws that are going to be changing in New York, New Jersey within the next year or so that we've been hearing about in the industry. Also concrete, you know, around your pool deck, that can also be prepared. Keep it from cracking, keep it from salts getting into it. Sidewalks can be coated to keep them from cracking. You know, also in the industry, we talked about sanitizers a couple of seconds ago. There's a lot of water-based low VOC epoxies in the industry that you can coat your walls, coat your areas where the hand sanitizers are going to be placed, because hand sanitizers have alcohol in them. Alcohol dissolves latex paint. So if you're going to be in a situation where you have a lot of hand sanitizers, a lot of people coming in and out, you're going to want to use a better coating to protect the wall, the metal, the doors, elevators, things like that, things that are touched a lot to keep the paint from dissolving. And again, as far as the industry, as far as coatings go, for the body of it, there's a solid stain, there's a semi-transparent stain. Most projects are solid stain. Semi-transparent does not hide as well. It only lasts for a short amount of time, a couple of years, where a solid stain, you know, in your cycles, you're going to get, let's say, 4 to 5 to 6 years out of the cycle of your paint. I mentioned decks a couple seconds ago. Decks are, decks we recommend, every year to 2 years, you address that. You take a look. Again, it's a solid stain is most used. There are clears, there are toners, and there's again an oil toner that's out in the market. So the one thing and the other thing that we wanted to bring out is this time of year. I know it's December and it's starting to get cold. A lot of the companies that we deal with have low temperature paint, so you can extend the paint season. Solid stains will go down to a surface temperature of 35 degrees. As long as it does not go below freezing for within that 24-hour period, it is fine to paint outside. We're getting close to the end of the season, but you can still extend the season for at least another week or two if you're trying to get the last couple of minutes or last couple of projects in before the real cold sets in. I'm available, and we're going to segue over to Ross. He's going to talk a little bit about the life of coatings and a little bit about prep, and then how to repaint.
Thanks, Rich. Rich spoke about a lot of different products. As he said, not everything is considered a paint or coatings. The key to a successful painting project, no matter what the coating is that you're intending to use, first off is to make sure it's the proper coating for that surface. And secondly, maybe just as important, prep of that surface, regardless of what it is. Everything needs to be cleaned properly with the proper solutions, needs to be rinsed properly or wiped down with proper solutions. Whether you're painting one door, I know we're not going to go out and set up power washers just to paint a couple doors or a garage door, but still, in the same respect, it's going to need to be clean. So there are, ways of doing that locally in a smaller capacity with just having clean water, simple solutions, and the proper product for that surface to clean it. We also want to get, typically you're trying to get the sheen down. When you're painting, let's say, a shiny surface like a front door or trim, you want to take some of that sheen off by cleaning the surface. We'll dull it and open the wood fibers, as well as sometimes some light sandpaper. But the last thing you should do is clean that surface before you apply. In our industry, in the HOA world, we find that most surfaces or buildings that are painted are comprised of wood side and cedar side, as well as pine trim for the most part. So as Rich indicated, the solid latex stain is the product that you typically see, which appears to be a solid paint, but it is something that is a little bit, has a little less solids in it, which is going to allow the wood grains to show through and show you the beauty of that expensive cedar that you have. One question that comes up all the time is, when is it time to paint? Well, at the end of the day, all surfaces are not created equal. It starts with the original preparation. Was it prepared properly from the developers, painters, or are we just constantly going on top of something that was never prepared properly to begin with? The other thing, and that'll affect how long paint will last as well, or any coatings for that matter. Another thing is the configuration of the building to the sun. Southern exposure is going to get beat up a lot quicker and break down a lot quicker than the northern exposure for the most part. But now that's on vertical surfaces. On horizontal surfaces, it actually could be the opposite, because if you have a deck that is holding snow and ice all winter long, that's going to create another issue and break down the paint, as well as, people put different salts, or, I know we like to use calcium in the industry because we think that calcium is less corrosive than salt. But at the end of the day, anything that is an ice melter or is going to melt the ice is going to damage a surface, especially a paint surface, or whether you can see it with your eyes or not, under a microscope, the surface is being damaged every every day. From the day that you put the paint on a wall or the solid latex stain on your siding, that paint is breaking down. That stain is breaking down every day that the sun hits it, that the wind hits it, the rain. When is the right time? You have to get the best solution is to get, think of it as maintenance. Don't think of it as when is it needed. What does it look? It's likely that it's too late. You don't want to wait till the paint starts peeling, because when there's not enough protection on your surface, you risk a larger project in the future. The wood is going to start breaking down. All that labor has to be paid for. So we say that you should be, for your solid latex stained buildings, 4 to 6 years should be the max that you're going to get out of that before you should recoat it. Some areas may look better, they're in the shade all day. Other areas are going to look kind of beat up, so you have to pick a time frame, and 4 to 6 years seems to be appropriate. I know, for instance, our company will provide a 4 to 5 year warranty where we'll come out and inspect the project every year to see how the surface is breaking down, see if we have to touch something up under our warranty at no charge, and we'll give that feedback to the association. A lot of times managers will walk with us and get a flavor for what's going on and how the buildings are holding up. But the key is to keep your buildings protected. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to those comments, Rich?
No, I think the biggest thing is when you're at the end of a life cycle of the paint, like Ross said, if you wait too long, the repairs get more expensive. So at 4 years, at 5 years, to wash a building and put another coat on is not very expensive. To have to replace wood, to have to fully prime, then the cost per square foot start to go up. So it is important, especially with a stain. Again, 4 to 5 to 6 years max, you need to get in a painting cycle. So that will save you guys money in the long term.
This is true. And one other thing is to really get a feel for how much wood replacement you may need or how much prep work is involved, because I can't tell you how many times how much it's going to cost, and that's your lump sum bid, and you know what it's going to cost, and we could get a visual and we could determine that there's problems or no problems and give you that lump sum bid up front. But it's a longer process to determine how much wood needs to be replaced. Price for wood replacement, so you could have a competitive bid, and you have 3-4 different companies quoting on it, and you could have those negotiations up front, so you know that you're not going to get gouged later, so to speak. But at the time, could turn into an additional, literally $60,000 to $80,000 in wood. We have plenty of projects that the wood replacement is more expensive than the initial painting of the project. So you really want to get a feel for that. Is $50,000. Great to know. What are we looking at in wood? And just get a feel. We typically, before we start the project, we'll go around with any interested parties. If there's a board member or the manager will come out with us, and rotted wood. All rotted wood needs to be replaced. So many times we go into communities and we're told, we need to save money. This is a paint project. Don't worry about the rotted wood. Well, we have to warranty this job, and we're going to stand behind it. Any good company is going to stand behind that warranty. So if you have rotted wood, station is cracked wood, wood that's cracked. That could be open for, input from the association, how far they want to go. But with that said,
Thanks, Ross. We actually have a couple of questions. I want to be able to fit those in. So is it okay to paint, the first one, is it okay to paint in temperatures we are experiencing this time of year?
Rich?
Yes, but you're getting close. I think this morning the temperature was, when I left my house, maybe 30 degrees. So most coatings, most companies that we deal with, again, the low temperature is 5. So if you're looking at, in a 24-hour window, it can't go below 35 in that 24-hour window to, because the problem you have is the length of time, it starts getting dark around 4:30, 5 o'clock, but it's really too cold first thing in the morning. So your window for painting right now is short, but yes, you can, for probably another week to 10 days, still finish a few jobs outside with most exterior coatings.
Okay, thanks. One more question. What is the life cycle of solid latex stain, and when should you recoat? I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, now I can. I'm sorry. Bye.
All right, so what's the life cycle of a solid latex stain, and when should we recoat a building?
Well, as I mentioned, most of these products on the trend is paint. We see in the industry that it seems like 4 to 6 years. Anything beyond that is pushing it, and you're going to have certain sides of the building that are too beat up to just paint. It's going to we do is we'll break the community down into 2, 3, or 4 sections and paint a section every year over those 4 years, and then start over. Doing this for almost 30 years, and then we would start over to the first phase, and the buildings are always in the other phases.
Ross, I'm not sure if you're just freezing up for me or for everyone, but I have one more question, so let's give it a try. Is there a different prep for staining than painting, and do you recommend power washing prior to staining and painting? I think you already touched on that, but if you want to just.
I don't know if you can hear Ross, but the prep is the same. The biggest thing is you want the building to be clean, free of mildew. Obviously in New Jersey, with the humidity that we have here, a lot of mildew sits on the side of houses and buildings. So that has to be removed with maybe a bleach water concentration. So between stain and paint, there is no prep difference. They both need to be washed. And it's important not just to power wash with water, but to use some kind of soap additive or something that is going to remove lift dirt and wash it off. Just like you're washing your car. You wouldn't just shoot a garden hose at your car to try to clean it. You're going to use some soap first and then rinse it off. So it's the same kind of concept with your buildings.
Okay. Those are all the questions I have for both of you. If any of the attendees have additional questions and we have time at the end, I'll definitely circle back. Next up, thank you both. Next up, we have Gaetano Barone. Gaetano holds a dual degree in business and finance from the prestigious Stern School of Business in NYU. Gaetano is New Jersey DCA licensed. He is also certified by the Irrigation Association as a certified commercial irrigation designer, certified irrigation contractor, certified irrigation auditor, and certified landscape water manager, as well as being certified backflow inspectors by both NEWWA and ASSE. Gaetano also serves as chairman of the board of landscape irrigation contractors for the state of New Jersey, vice president of the New Jersey Irrigation Association, as well as committees with the National Irrigation Association. Gaetano is Rainbird IQ factory certified technician and operator. He is continually furthering his education in the field and is a leader of water conservation technologies and methods. Welcome, Gaetano.
Hello, thank you. You guys can call me Guy. It's a little easier. My mom started that when I was a little younger, when she needed to yell at me, and Gaetano was just a little too long for her. But you guys are all welcome to use Guy. I usually turn around to just about anything if you're calling me. So I wanted to talk to everybody about some smart irrigation technology. They've been around for quite a while now. The problem has been that they've just been a little cost prohibitive in the past. But over about the last 5 to 10 years, the prices have really been coming down quite significantly. And it's made it so that especially for associations, community associations, and these types of larger projects that usually have a lot of infrastructure, it's made it so that it's become more reasonable and more palatable as far as the installation costs. And the actual savings are quite significant if everything can be applied correctly. Now, smart irrigation technologies, they've definitely become a lot more reliable. I remember about 15 years ago, they were just so annoying to work with. They were not user friendly at all on our end, because we're the ones that then have to manage the systems. So the user friendliness has really improved quite exponentially over the years, to the point that now some of the newer interfaces are just really easy. We can train almost anybody to manage them. That's how simple they are. They don't have to really know a whole lot about even irrigation, believe it or not. Just with some key bullet points, we can have managers set up so that they can manage these systems and just look for anomalies is really what ends up coming down to. And the anomalies are actually pretty simple, because these smart controllers tell us what they are. It's just then a matter of reporting it to somebody who knows irrigation, or knows what to do when they find these reports. Really now in irrigation, there really isn't a whole lot to it. You're pretty much installing it. Hopefully you install it with some good quality equipment. It's installed properly, designed properly, and that's been the same forever. The technologies haven't really changed a whole lot on that end of it. Really, all the technology changes lately that have had significant improvements have been all of the control systems, the irrigation controllers, the sensors, the internet interfaces with the sensors, and the reporting, which has become quite significant. And what I mean by reporting is we as managers can actually, the systems will actually email us reports or text us reports, and they do it automatically, time intervals, or just when the triggers are actually tripped, as far as the sensors, and we can set all kinds of parameters into the systems, and then once they're set, the system just knows what to do, and it just keeps doing it until we tell it otherwise, or until some other triggers are set, because we can usually set multiple triggers at once, so that depending on what's happening, different triggers will then allow the system to do different things. So it's actually pretty nice, because it makes it so that it's not the same mundane work day in, day out. It's a lot more interesting. We have some applications that can be modified and made more specific depending on the type of irrigation system you have. And now all the manufacturers all have one smart system or another. We're finding that there's only maybe 2 manufacturers right now that have made their systems a lot more user friendly, where the coding is a lot less complicated. And all that means for you guys is that as managers, we just have to do less work to stay on top of it for you. And by that, it just turns around to be less expensive for you to be able to implement the systems, is really all it comes down to. And then it's all about return on investment. What's it going to really do for you? You're going to spend all this money, to get it all right, but in the long run, is it just a matter of spending money and, just things work better, or it's easier for the irrigation guy to work on it? Well, no, there's a lot of cost savings involved in that too. And usually what we find is that the cost effective part of it ends up being your return on investment. And so there's a lot of savings also. So usually the systems end up paying for themselves just on savings. And does anybody have any questions?
Yes, actually, there are a couple of questions. What is a smart irrigation system, and how does it work?
All right, so that's pretty good. And believe it or not, there's no defined system in the sense of, if it does X, Y, and Z, it's a smart irrigation system. It's developing so quickly right now. There's a lot of applications. And I find that there's maybe about 6 attributes that are good attributes to kind of encompass that whole entire smart irrigation definition in general. One of them is, the first one is that the system has to be able to diagnose and make reports on the electrical systems. And what that means is that if there's a short in the system, or there's a high voltage reading, low voltage reading, or no voltage reading, that it needs to be able to log it so that the manager can then either find it and look at it, or it has to be able to report it in a way to advise the manager that there's a problem in that part of the system. And what that means is, for example, if one of the zones isn't working, it didn't come on, or the solenoid has shorted out, that the system tells you that there's an electrical problem with either that zone or with multiple zones or with even itself inside of its own circuitry. So a smart system has to be able to do that, in my opinion. The other component is the hydraulic component. So we can install sensors in the system also, so that it actually will store flow data. So for each individual zone, it'll store the amount of flow for that zone, and it does it for each individual zone separately, so that if there's a pipe breaking or the zone just doesn't shut down for some reason, because these valves are hydraulic and sometimes they just don't shut off. I'm sure none of you have ever experienced that. So these systems, these sensors will communicate with the controllers, and it's usually two-way communication, and they'll let them know that there's a problem with the flow. It's no longer what it's stored at and what it's been historically, and then it'll do the same thing. It'll create a report. It'll contact the manager in one way or another, be via internet or some other way, and let them know. Another part is internet connectivity, and I think that this is a really important one, because this opens up then the door to all of those reporting factors, which make it a lot easier to be able to notify whoever's managing the system that there's a problem. So almost all the manufacturers now have internet connectivity for the controllers, one way or another, so that the controllers can then communicate in real time and two-way communication between whoever's managing the system and the controller itself. And we can literally do that at any moment in our trucks. It's just amazing, the endless possibilities that's opened up. The other thing that the internet connectivity does for us, which is really the fourth thing that makes it extremely important to be a smart system, is the weather-based programming. And what that means is that you can have it split up in two ways. You can even have an on-site weather station, which I find that other than golf courses, nobody really does that anymore. It's just not cost effective to do it. Or you can have an internet-based weather interpretive system. So what that means is literally that the controller itself will go on the internet every day, sometimes twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day, depending on how it's being programmed, and it'll download weather data, and then it will reprogram itself based on that weather data, so that you can set them so that if it's forecasted to rain with an 80% probability for tomorrow, the system won't even come on tonight. We can set them to not come on if it rained, yesterday and it rained an inch of rain. And it's really, once the parameters are set, it just pretty much does everything. It might not come on for 4 or 5 days if the temperatures are low. It's amazing what we can do once you get that internet connectivity set up. And then the electronic reporting, which is all part of most of this, which makes it on the service end very cost effective, which is that it informs us. And it informs us electronically, and it does it all the time as soon as anything happens. Now, the sixth part that I think makes a system smart, which I think is a very important part, which is also the part that has the highest return on investment, is the sprinkler heads, believe it or not. And most people don't realize it. But we've been installing sprinkler heads that are not categorized as smart sprinkler heads. They're really just water. They're just pressure compensating sprinkler heads. And what that means is that depending on the pressures that are in the piping, these sprinkler heads will only will change the water pressure at the head itself, so that then the droplet size that are coming out of the sprinkler head and also the distribution of the water through the sprinkler heads ends up being what the manufacturer designed the sprinkler head to do at its optimum performance rating. And believe it or not, just on that alone, you can have water savings of 30 to 40% without even doing anything else. So I think that, and this is the part that just most of the articles I read don't mention anything about sprinkler heads. But the reason I say that these are smart is because they, even though it's done by check valves and hydraulics, they will actually keep the water pressure, as long as it's not lower than the minimum water pressure that's required for that head to operate at, it'll keep it at its optimal performance level. Okay.
Another question for you. Can this system be integrated into the existing system? What are some of the costs of installation? How long does it take to install? And when is the best time of year to install such a system?
Okay, so we can install the systems pretty much at any time. If we have to do anything outdoors, really what it comes down to is the ground frozen. If the ground isn't frozen, then we can install these systems. We can run electrical diagnostics on most of it. We even do, let's say we did a revamp and we reinstalled 5,000 sprinkler heads. We'll actually go through it and turn everything on, test everything hydraulically, and then we'll shut it right back down, connect the compressors, and blow all the water out of it so nothing freezes. So really, it's just a matter of, as long as the ground is not frozen, we can work. You can apply these systems to any irrigation system. We have had some irrigation systems that have been so poorly installed that we've recommended that they don't be installed, only because you're not going to get the return on investment from the installation because the design is so extremely poor. But that's been far and few between. Most of the systems are, at least on the controller end of it, very, very easy to modify, very easy to upgrade. We can upgrade 2-wire systems, we can upgrade regular conventional stranded systems, so that's actually pretty easy. The cost really depends on the size of the irrigation system and what's actually there. Believe it or not, the larger the system, the more economies of scale you have, and the faster your return on investment is going to happen. We find that usually return on investment is about 5 years or so, depending on the system. We've had some up to 3 years, believe it or not, where they paid for themselves in 3 years from the water savings and from the service savings too, because don't forget, it's not just about the water, it's because the system is reporting things. So for example, even if you need, let's say you're having paving done, you're having painting done, you send us an email and say, hey, we're having painting done, we need the system off. We don't have to come out to your site. We can just log in, shut the system down, log off. You don't get any service calls for something like that, which just becomes part of your regular irrigation service fees. And that's it. So there's a lot of economies of scale that aren't just about water. It's also about actual service calls. So usually what we find is that we usually get a savings of about between 25 and 60%, and that depends a lot on weather. So in other words, you can have a year where you can get 60% with the same system, and then another year you only get 25% savings, and that's all relative to weather, rain, and how much rain and how cold it is and how hot it is and that kind of thing. But also we have had results of up to 70% water savings in 1 year. On wet years, you can actually get better water savings because the system doesn't run. On when it's hot, you usually get more performance. You get a little less service, a little less. You get more water usage, so you don't save as much. But things just stay greener, which is also part of what we're trying to achieve, is to keep things looking good. Any other questions?
That's it for now. Thank you so much for that. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, thank you. Next we have Glenn Masulo. Glenn is a senior partner of Preferred Community Management in Somerset, New Jersey. He has a PCAM designation and has been involved in many aspects of common interest communities. Mr. Masulo, in addition to currently serving on the CAI Legislative Action Committee, has served on numerous CI committees during his career. In his current role as a member of LAC, he has traveled several times to Washington, D.C. to meet with our federal representatives and their staff to express our concerns and educate them on where we need assistance. In addition, he has done the same on the state level. He has also been involved in turnaround communities that have gotten themselves into economic difficulties, infrastructure projects, and legal issues that confront today's communities. Thank you. Welcome, Glenn.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending this meeting. I'm going to talk about what you do when you're starting a painting project. It's basically 101 for property managers and how they deal with going into a painting project. So the first thing, in which it sounds a little bit simple, is that I recommend that you read your governing document, what the association is actually responsible for as it relates to painting. You might be replacing another manager on the premises or a portfolio manager that preceded you before, and you may assume that was what was being done before was correct. Sometimes people just pass this on, and then later on they find out, gee, we should have painted this or we shouldn't have painted that. So I highly recommend you do that. Some examples of it would be like front doors or wooden garage doors. Lots of times these are not included in the governing documents. In my 30 years of doing this, I highly suggest you look into a way of actually including them. Because if you think about, let's take an association with 200 doors that relatively can be seen from the street or whatever. When everybody's doing them individually, so I move in, I do one today, someone that does it in 3 years from now, they're all responsible, but they're all aging at a different time. That starts to look a little bit odd. And a lot of times the colors don't quite match up. And some of these doors are very close to each other. Plus, if your association's doing this, the cost of doing it as a bulk item would be a lot less expensive if it's folded into the maintenance fee versus everyone doing it individually. So I would look into that before I start. So you want to know that before you start. And then the next thing you would do after you do that is, once you have decided what you feel should be done, review your finances to make sure you feel that there's enough to cover this project. Then you would present it to the board. Hopefully, for the last year or two, this has been looked at closely in the budget. So when the time comes, you're not just dealing with it in the current budget. So you've prepared for it, and the board, as it's changing people, are aware that this is something that's going to be done in the not too distant future. So it's not present to them all at once. Then once the board says, hey, we want to go ahead with this, you're going to have to work at a set of specifications that you and the board will approve. You could look to CAI. They have booklets on this, how to set up specifications and how to deal with these type of projects. I highly recommend that you use that as source. You also want to go to your colleagues, people that have been doing this for a long period of time, and ask them for tips. And also make sure you talk to your insurance rep, because when you set those specifications up, you're going to want to make sure you include in them that the contractor have the proper insurance that your insurance agent feels should be included. Next, then you'll get the approval of the specifications, and then you'll send them out to the prospective vendors. Once you get them all back, I would recommend you narrow them down to 2 or 3 vendors of which you would want to meet with them in one way or the other. In today's world, you might want to meet with them on a Zoom meeting, but you're doing this outside. If you're masked up and stay away from each other, that works also. So you may want to meet with them then, just to get a little idea if you haven't dealt with these vendors before, particularly new vendors, people that obviously if you worked with in the past, you know how you all work together, and that works fine. Once you've narrowed it down to one vendor, but I would say then for sure you actually want to walk the site and make sure that what they think they're doing and what you think they're going to do, that you're both on the same track. Even though you had this in writing, you don't want to run into any bumps that somebody misread something in those specifications. So you work that out, and if that all works well, then you would notify the association attorney to work out an agreement that the vendor would review and then sign. After that, depending on the complexity and the size of the development, you would decide, how often you want to go there while the project's being done. You may do that intermittently. You also may want to, view it. If it's going to take a week or 2 weeks to do, you'll decide how often there. When it's all done, I would recommend if you use something like OneCall or some calling device, send a notice to all your homeowners to say, hey, the project's done. Any comments, please get back to me, within, 48 hours or whatever you feel is a reasonable period of time. So if there's anything that was not brought out that you didn't pick up, that they're not happy with, or they felt that was missed, you could bring it to the painters, your vendors' attention. So while they're there, they can deal with it, and they don't, they're not being jerked back and forth to deal with that issue. You also might be able to, if you have enough of people on email, send that to them also and do it the same way. And then once that's all been done, I'm sure the board, a lot of board members will have been seeing this being done and they'll be commenting on it. Then the final is approved by the board that it's okay to pay them, and you release the check. And that's the way I would look at that process. It's pretty simple stuff, but for the most part, I don't think you want to leave any of this out. And that's basically all I have to say about it. Any questions?
Yes, there are a couple of questions. The first, what is the first thing you should do when you meet your vendor?
When you meet your vendor, it's basically what I had stated in this. You want to make sure that vendor and you are on the same track. Painting could be really, should we paint the kick plate? Shouldn't we paint the kick plate? If some buildings have columns, does the columns get painted? Little things like that. There's little items sometimes you might miss, but when your painter's out there with you and the vendor's out there, they have done this many times before, and they may pick up something that you might have missed, and you don't want to egg on your face later on that you missed this. So you really want their advice on these things in the beginning. Anything else?
Yes, one last question. What is the last thing you should do when you are meeting your vendor? Very last thing.
Yeah, the last thing is, again, you're going to do an inspection with them. Both of you are going to walk through the whole place together, look at everything, and make sure that your eyes are not missing something. The difference with painting versus, say, doing roofing or concrete or a big asphalt project, usually there's an engineer involved. That's sort of your go-between, that's sort of protecting you. But in painting projects, it's rare that you would have an engineer involved on painting. So you face more of the heat if something is missed. So you really want to be careful on painting because it is different than those other types of capital improvement projects.
Thank you. I believe those are all the questions. Hold on, one more. Actually, is Dan still on?
Yeah, I'm here.
We have one more question for you. Let me see. Given our circumstances with COVID-19, are we permitted to use an independent accountant auditor firm to account for ballots and certify an election?
Yes, absolutely.
Did you hear that? Did you get that?
I'm not sure if they heard me, but yeah, if you want to use your independent auditor to tally the votes, there shouldn't be any issues with that whatsoever.
Okay, those are all the questions. I want to thank all of our presenters today. A lot of excellent information. This webinar recording will be on our website. And if any of our attendees think of any other questions, please feel free to email me. I'm Angela at CAI-NJ.org, and I'll put you in touch with the speakers. Thank you, everyone. Hopefully, I'll see you next week.
Thank you.
All right, thanks
Thank you.
again.
Bye, guys.
Bye.